What would you do if you discovered that your neighbors were hiding something terrible behind the curtain windows of their house? Imagine a cold winter evening in early 1917. The snow crunches under your feet as you walk along the narrow path between the wooden huts. In the distance, on the very edge of the village, among the blackening bare trees, stands a house that emanates something unnatural. This is the house of the Danchenko family, from which the locals have always kept their distance, and now they bypass it, crossing themselves and whispering prayers. From a slightly open window, a strange sound resembling a child's cry can be heard for a moment. But this cry breaks off so abruptly, as if someone's hand has clamped the crying child's mouth shut. If you are interested in learning what secrets the walls of this house hold and what happened to the Danchenko family in those distant years, stay with us until the end of this story. What you will hear may seem incredible, but every word is based on documents and testimonies that have long been hidden from the public. The dark swamps of Polesye have always spawned strange stories. This region, lost between Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine, has long been famous for its superstitions and mysterious incidents. But the story we are about to tell goes beyond ordinary village legends. It is so shocking that many documents related to it were deliberately destroyed by the authorities of that time. Our investigation began with the discovery of a dilapidated folder in the archive of the former police department of the Minsk Governorate. The folder contained scattered documents related to an investigation that was suddenly terminated in February of 1917, shortly before the revolutionary events. On the cover of the folder, faded ink wrote only one word: Danchenko. Vasily Kravchuk, a historian and our chief researcher, stumbled upon this folder by chance while sorting materials for his dissertation on social processes in pre-revolutionary Russia. He didn't attach much importance to it until he opened the first page with the notation "Top Secret" and a mysterious handwritten note. Case closed by personal order of the governor. Materials to be destroyed. But for some reason, these materials were not destroyed, but remained lying in the archive, forgotten for more than 100 years. When I first opened this folder, I was immediately struck by the smell, says Vasily. It wasn't the usual smell of old paper. There was something else in it, something heavy and unpleasant, as if the documents themselves were soaked in the fear and anxiety of those who wrote them. The first thing Vasily found in the folder was an official report from District Police Officer Stepan Mihailovich Lozovsky from the village of Black Moss, dated January 20th, 1917. The report spoke of the sudden death of Grigory Danchenko, a 52-year-old peasant, the head of a family that had lived on the outskirts of the village for the past 15 years. According to eyewitnesses, Citizen Danchenko, GP, died suddenly during dinner in the presence of all family members, the report stated. According to the testimony of his wife, Anna Danchenko, her husband suddenly grabbed his throat. His face turned blue, and he fell down dead without saying a word. Medical assistant Ivansov FK, who arrived on call, pronounced him dead and determined the cause of death to be suffocation, presumably caused by food entering the respiratory tract. It would seem like an ordinary accident, one of many that occurred in the remote villages of the Russian Empire, but something prompted District Police Officer Lozovsky to write at the end of his report, "I consider it necessary to note the strange behavior of the deceased's family members. None of those present, including the widow, showed visible signs of grief. The deceased's children, of whom there are 6 in the family, remained aloof and avoided looking at their father's body. The behavior of the eldest son, Nikolai, seemed particularly disturbing, who, according to medical assistant Ivansov, showed signs of nervous excitement bordering on satisfaction. This remark might have gone unnoticed, if not for the subsequent events that forced the authorities to launch an investigation. 3 days after the funeral of Grigory Danchenko, which took place unusually hastily and without observing all the traditional rites, a local teacher, Sergei Petrovich Varnin, appeared at the police station with an alarming statement. According to the interrogation protocol, Varnin said that the youngest daughter of the deceased, 12-year-old Maria, had not attended school for the past 6 months, although before that she had been one of the best students. When the teacher came to the Danchenko house to find out the reasons for the girl's absence, Anna Danchenko said that her daughter was ill and could not leave the house. However, through the window, the teacher noticed Maria in the yard, and the girl looked quite healthy, but strangely changed. She moved somehow unnaturally, as if each movement was difficult for her. Varnon's words were quoted in the protocol. But what really frightened me was the expression on her face. It was the look of a person who had experienced something terrible. When our eyes met, she flinched and quickly disappeared into the house. I managed to notice that there were some strange marks on her neck, like bruises or burns. The teacher also reported that several months ago he had heard from his students that the older Danchenko children, Nikolai and Ekaterina, who were 22 and 19 years old, respectively, were behaving strangely towards each other. The children said that they saw Nikolai and Ekaterina kissing behind the shed, but not the way a brother and sister kiss, the protocol stated. These testimonies might have gone unnoticed, if not for Varnon's reputation as a respected member of society and a man of impeccable honesty. District Police Officer Lozovsky decided to conduct a preliminary investigation, which he reported to his superiors. What the district police officer discovered during this investigation became the first shocking discovery in the history of the Danchenko family. According to his report of January 25th, he interviewed several residents of the village and found that the Danchenko family had moved to Black Moss about 15 years ago from some remote village deep in Polesye. From the very beginning, they kept to themselves, rarely communicated with their neighbors, and rarely appeared at village festivals and gatherings. Particularly noteworthy is the fact that during all 15 years of living in the village, not a single member of the Danchenko family has married local residents. Although some of the deceased children have reached marriageable age, the district police officer wrote. According to the headman, Mikhail Kuzmich Savchenko, several years ago one of the local guys, Ivan Krolov, courted Ekaterina Danchenko, but received a decisive refusal from her father. After that, Ivan allegedly tried to secretly meet with the girl, but soon suddenly fell ill with a strange disease from which he died in 3 days. Before his death, he raved and spoke of devils with white eyes who were strangling him at night. What is even more disturbing is that the district police officer found that some residents of the village had noticed strange rituals that the Danchenko family performed on the full moon. The hunter, Fedor Lisitsyn, claimed that one night, returning from the forest, he saw all the members of the Danchenko family standing naked in a circle of candles in the backyard of their house and monotonously repeating something in an incomprehensible language, similar to distorted Latin, the report stated. However, the witness admitted that he was very drunk that evening, so his testimony may be unreliable. Despite the dubious nature of some of the evidence, District Police Officer Lozovsky decided that the situation required a more thorough investigation. He requested permission for an official search of the Danchenko house, which was obtained on February 1st. What the police found during the search made even the seasoned district police officer shudder with horror. According to the search protocol, a secret room was discovered in the basement of the house, the entrance to which was artfully disguised behind a large wooden cabinet. In this room was a stone altar with strange symbols carved on it, and the walls were covered with inscriptions in an unknown language written with something that experts later identified as a mixture of blood and ash. But the most shocking discovery was the human remains found in a niche behind the altar. In a wooden box lined inside with copper plates engraved with mysterious signs, we discovered the remains of an infant, presumably a newborn, the district police officer wrote in his report. Next to the box lay a book in a leather binding, the pages of which were covered in small handwriting in a mixture of Russian and Latin, with many symbols resembling those that were carved on the altar. After this discovery, all members of the Danchenko family were arrested and taken to the district town for questioning. Anna Danchenko and her eldest son Nikolai remained silent, refusing to answer the investigators' questions. But the younger children, especially Maria and her 14-year-old brother Peter, turned out to be more talkative, although their testimonies were so horrifying that investigators long doubted their veracity. According to the children, their family belonged to an ancient cult rooted in pagan times. This cult, which they called the Keepers of Blood, believed that a special blood flowed in their veins, inherited from some ancient creature that they revered as a deity. To preserve the purity of this blood, members of the cult practiced consanguineous relationships and also performed rituals using human blood. Father told us that we are special, that our blood is not like other people's. Maria's words were quoted in the protocol. He said that if we allow our blood to mix with ordinary blood, we will lose our strength and our connection with the one who waits beyond. Peter supplemented his sister's testimony with even more alarming details. When I turned 12, my father took me to the basement and showed me the altar. He said that now I was old enough to participate in the rituals. He cut my palm and mixed my blood with his, and then he forced me to drink this mixture. Then he showed me the book and said that someday I would read from it like him. But the most shocking testimony was given by 15-year-old Alexei, the middle son. Nikolai and Ekaterina have been sleeping together like husband and wife for a long time. Father approved of this and said that it should be so, that this is how our ancestors have acted for many generations. When Ekaterina became pregnant, Father was very pleased and said that the child would be special, stronger than all of us. But when the child was born, there was something wrong with him. He hardly cried and looked at us with strange white eyes. Father said that the child should be sacrificed so that the one who waits would bless our family. He and Nikolai took the baby to the basement, and we never saw him again. These testimonies were so horrifying that investigators requested a medical examination of all the children. The results of this examination became another shocking discovery. All the children were found to have strange genetic anomalies, which Dr. Heinrich Stoltz, a specialist in hereditary diseases invited from St. Petersburg, described as the result of prolonged inbreeding. All 6 children show characteristic signs of degeneration caused by consanguineous crossing over several generations. Dr. Stoltz wrote in his conclusion, "Particularly alarming are the anomalies of the skull and skeleton, as well as specific changes in the pigmentation of the eyes, which in all children have an unusual light gray, almost white color of the iris. Such anomalies are extremely rare and indicate the presence of serious genetic mutations." Dr. Stoltz also noted that numerous scars and burns were found on the bodies of all the children, located in a certain order resembling ritual patterns. These scars could not have been the result of accidental injuries, Dr. Stoltz wrote. They were inflicted intentionally with surgical precision and form complex patterns that are repeated in all children. But the strangest discovery Dr. Stoltz made when analyzing the blood of the Danchenko family members. "The blood of all family members demonstrates unusual characteristics that I cannot explain from a scientific point of view," he wrote. "It has an abnormally high viscosity and an unusual dark red, almost black color. In addition, microscopic examination of the blood revealed cellular structures unknown to me that do not correspond to any pathogenic organisms known to science." While doctors were studying the physical condition of the Danchenko family members, investigators were deciphering the book found in the basement. This task proved to be extremely difficult, as the text was written in a mixture of several languages using a cipher that was only partially deciphered. However, even those fragments that could be read painted a gruesome picture. The book is something like a family tree, and at the same time a guide to rituals, wrote expert cryptographer Alexander Neverov in his report. It traces the history of a certain family or clan over many centuries, starting around the 10th century. According to these records, the founder of the clan was a certain Jerome Danchenko, who allegedly made a deal with a creature that in the text is called by different names, but most often the one who waits beyond, or simply the waiting one. The essence of this agreement, as far as could be understood from the fragmentary records, was that Jerome and his descendants received some power or authority in exchange for loyalty and regular sacrifices. A condition for preserving this power was maintaining the purity of blood, which in practice meant consanguineous marriages and strict isolation from the rest of the world. The book describes in detail the rituals that family members must perform on certain days of the lunar calendar, Neverov continued. These rituals include the use of blood, both animal and human, as well as sexual practices between close relatives. Particularly disturbing is the description of the initiation that all family members must undergo upon reaching the age of 12, and which includes ritual copulation with the closest relative of the opposite sex. But the most shocking part of the book was the descriptions of the so-called children of the waiting one, offspring born from particularly close consanguineous relationships, usually between brother and sister or father and daughter. According to the records, such children possess special powers and could serve as conductors for the waiting one, allowing him to partially penetrate into our world. The children of the waiting one are described as having an unusual appearance. White eyes, pale skin, tall stature, and 6 fingers on each hand, Neverov wrote. The book claims that such children are born rarely, about once every 3 or 4 generations, and their birth is considered a great blessing. However, there is an indication that not all such children survive, and many die in infancy or are born with serious defects. According to the records in the book, the last child of the waiting one was born in the Danchenko family at the end of the 15th century, and since then the family has been waiting for the appearance of a new one. Apparently, Grigory Danchenko hoped that the child born from the union of his older children, Nikolai and Ekaterina, would become such a chosen one, but was disappointed when the infant turned out not to be as expected. Here the text becomes especially disturbing, Neverov noted. It says that if the child of the waiting one is born with defects or incomplete likeness, he must be sacrificed so that his blood can nourish the gates and help in the birth of the next, more perfect chosen one. These discoveries forced investigators to look at the death of Grigory Danchenko in a new light. It was decided to exhume his body for a repeat autopsy, which was performed by Dr. Stoltz. The results were unexpected. Traces of a strong vegetable poison were found in the deceased's body. Death did not occur from suffocation, as was originally established, but from poisoning, Dr. Stoltz wrote. Traces of belladonna extract were found in the stomach and blood of the deceased in a concentration many times higher than the lethal dose. Such an amount of poison could not have entered the body accidentally. This is certainly intentional poisoning. This discovery led to a new interrogation of Anna Danchenko, who had previously stubbornly remained silent. Under pressure of evidence, she finally spoke. Her testimony shed light on the events preceding her husband's death. Grigory became increasingly cruel and insane in recent years. Her words were quoted in the protocol. After our grandson was born not as he expected, Grigory flew into a rage. He accused me of spoiling the blood of our clan, even though I myself come from the family of his second cousin and our marriage was approved by the elders. He began to insist that Nikolai conceive a new child, but not with Ekaterina, but with our youngest daughter, Maria, who was only 11 years old at the time. According to Anna, this was the last straw. She could not allow her youngest daughter to be subjected to the same thing that Ekaterina had gone through. I knew that Grigory would not stop, she said. He was obsessed with the idea of creating a perfect vessel for the waiting one. He said that he felt the approach of the time when the waiting one would be able to fully enter our world, and that an ideal vessel was needed for this, a child with the purest possible blood. He even hinted that if Maria was not suitable, he himself, I could not allow this. Anna confessed that she had mixed poison into her husband's food, acting together with her eldest son, Nikolai, who by that time had begun to doubt the correctness of the path along which their father was leading them. Nikolai studied medical books that he secretly brought from the city, Anna said. He saw what was happening to our children, saw the deformities and diseases that were becoming stronger with each generation. He realized that what our clan considered a blessing and strength was actually a curse slowly killing us. After Grigory's death, Nikolai wanted to destroy the book and the altar, to abandon the practices they had been taught since childhood. But Ekaterina, who by that time had fully shared the madness of her father, opposed this. She threatened to tell the authorities about the murder of her father if Nikolai did not continue the rituals, Anna said. She believed that her next child would certainly become the chosen one that her father was waiting for. Nikolai was forced to obey, although I saw how it tore him apart from the inside. This testimony completely changed the picture of what had happened. From villains, Anna and Nikolai turned into victims, trying to break the vicious circle of violence and madness. But there was still one question that worried the investigators. What happened to the infant whose remains were found in the basement? Ekaterina herself answered this question, who until that moment had refused to cooperate with the investigation. Upon learning of the confessions of her mother and brother, she flew into a rage and demanded a meeting with the investigator. Her testimony, recorded on February 15th, became the last shocking discovery in this case. My son was not defective or inferior as my father believed, Ekaterina stated. He was exactly what he was supposed to be, the perfect vessel for the waiting one. Yes, he had white eyes and 6 fingers on each hand, but these are not defects, but signs of election. Father simply did not understand this, because by that time his mind had already become clouded by age and fear. He saw in the child what he wanted to see: failure. Another proof that our clan is weakening. But I knew the truth. According to Ekaterina, Grigory insisted on sacrificing the infant, despite her protests. He said that the child's blood would help the next one become even stronger, she said. He took my son and carried him to the basement. I heard the child screaming, and then there was silence. When my father returned, his hands were covered in blood, and his eyes were burning with some kind of insane fire. He said that the waiting one had accepted the sacrifice and that now we must prepare for the next attempt. It was then, according to Ekaterina, that she decided that her father must die. I asked my mother to help me, she confessed. We had never been close, but at that moment we both understood that my father had gone too far. I knew that Nikolai also wanted to stop him, although for other reasons. Nikolai was afraid of what our family was turning into, and I was afraid that my father would destroy another one of my children if he decided that he was not perfect enough. What happened next shocked even seasoned researchers. Ekaterina stated that she was pregnant again, and the father of this child was Nikolai again. We could not stop, she said with some strange gleam in her eyes. Our blood demanded it. We felt that this time everything would be right, and I knew that I had to protect this child from my father at any cost. With this confession, Ekaterina effectively signed her own death warrant. While the actions of Anna and Nikolai could be seen as an attempt to protect the younger children from the madness of the head of the family, Ekaterina's behavior showed that she fully shared her father's belief in the need to continue their perverse practices. The investigation was coming to an end, and the authorities faced a dilemma of how to deal with the Danchenko family members. On the one hand, their crimes were horrific and deserved the most severe punishment. On the other hand, a public trial over them could cause serious public outcry and put the authorities in an awkward position, especially given the fact that the family had practiced their rituals for more than 15 years, remaining unnoticed. The case was submitted to the governor for consideration, who, after consulting with senior officials, decided to terminate the official investigation and resolve the situation quietly. According to a document dated February 20th, signed by the governor himself, Anna and Nikolai Danchenko were to be placed in a psychiatric hospital in St. Petersburg until their complete recovery, which effectively meant life imprisonment. Ekaterina, as the most active participant in the cult, was subject to secret trial and execution. The younger children were to be separated and sent to different orphanages under changed surnames in order to break the connection with their past. All materials of this case are subject to immediate destruction after the execution of the indicated measures, the document stated. Any mention of the Danchenko family and their practices in the public space is strictly prohibited. The house belonging to the family must be burned to the ground, and the land on which it stood must be covered with salt and declared uninhabitable. However, as we now know, the case materials were not completely destroyed. Perhaps some official considered them too important or interesting to give to the fire and secretly saved part of the documents. But, more importantly, the order to destroy the Danchenko house was not carried out. According to the memoirs of local residents, recorded in the 1960s by the folklorist Mikhail Petrov, they did try to burn the house, but it did not burn. They set it on fire 3 times, and each time the fire seemed to bypass the house, burning everything around, but not touching the walls themselves, said 90-year-old Stepan Korchak, who as a child witnessed these events. Then they decided to dismantle it, but 2 workers who started removing the roof suddenly fell down dead, as if their hearts had stopped in an instant. After that, no one wanted to even approach the house. It was surrounded by a high fence, and the priest from the neighboring village performed a rite of consecration of the land around it so that evil would not spread further. The house stood abandoned until Soviet times, when the new authorities, who did not believe in superstitions, decided to use it as a warehouse for the local collective farm. But even then, strange incidents were associated with it. Products in this warehouse spoiled faster than anywhere else, recalled former collective farmer Ivan Melnik. and the people who worked there often got sick and complained of nightmares. They said that in their dreams they saw a pale woman with white eyes who called them to the basement. After the warehouse keeper Petro Zenchik hanged himself in this basement in 1948, the warehouse was closed and the house was abandoned again. During the Great Patriotic War, when these places were occupied by the Germans, the Danchenko house briefly attracted the attention of the occupation authorities. According to some reports, a group of SS officers from the Annenerb unit, which was engaged in the study of occult and paranormal phenomena, spent several weeks in the house, conducting some experiments. What exactly they were looking for and what they found remains a mystery, but after their departure, local residents noticed that strange sounds resembling a child's cry could be heard from the house, although nothing like this had been observed before. After the war, the house was again abandoned and gradually destroyed by time. In the 1960s, local authorities planned to demolish it and build a rural club in its place, but strange events forced them to change their plans. The bulldozer driver who was supposed to demolish the house claimed that he saw a woman with a baby in her arms in the window of the second floor. Although the house had been uninhabited for many years, Mikhail Petrov wrote in his notes, "When he tried to drive the bulldozer into the yard, the machine suddenly stalled, and all attempts to start it failed. As soon as the bulldozer was pulled away from the house, the engine started again without any issues." The last documented incident connected to the Danchenko house occurred in 1982, when a group of students from Minsk, who had come to the area to collect folklore, decided to spend the night in the abandoned house, unaware of its history. According to the sole survivor, Natalia Sorokina, they heard strange sounds coming from the basement that night and decided to investigate their source. "We found a secret room in the basement hidden behind an old wardrobe," Natalia recounted. "In the room was a stone altar and strange symbols on the walls. Oleg, our leader, decided to light the candles that we found there to get a better look at the inscriptions. As soon as he did, the candles burned with a strange bluish flame, and we heard a voice whispering in an incomprehensible language. Then I saw figures in dark clothing surrounding us. They had pale faces and strange white eyes without pupils. They held out their six-fingered hands towards us, each holding a knife. According to Natalia, she fainted from terror, and when she came to, she was already outside the house, alone. She ran to the village for help, but when the locals returned to the house with her, they found no one inside. 5 of her companions had vanished without a trace, and their fate remains unknown to this day. The official investigation concluded that the students were likely victims of an accident, possibly a collapse of the dilapidated house structure or poisoning from toxic fumes from the old basement. However, no bodies were found, despite thorough searches. After this incident, the local authorities finally decided to put an end to the legends about the cursed house and razed it to the ground. The area was cleared and turned into an abandoned wasteland, which gradually became overgrown with trees and shrubs. No one ever built houses there again, and over time, the exact location of the Danchenko house was forgotten. Only the old-timers still remembered it and warned children not to go to that part of the forest, especially during a full moon. It would seem that the story of the Danchenko family should have ended there, but in 2010, a group of paranormal investigators from Kiev, who learned about the legend from an article by Mikhail Petrov, decided to find the site where the house once stood and spend the night there with recording equipment. Their report, published in the obscure journal Mysteries and Riddles, contained intriguing details. "We spent 3 nights at the supposed location of the Danchenko house," wrote the group's leader, Andrei Kovalenko. "For the first 2 nights, our equipment did not record anything unusual, although all members of the group noted a strange feeling of anxiety and discomfort that increased with the onset of darkness. But on the 3rd night, which coincided with a full moon, something happened that is difficult to explain by rational means. According to the report, at around 3 o'clock in the morning, all of the group's devices simultaneously malfunctioned, and the air temperature dropped sharply, even though it was the middle of July. We physically felt the cold coming from the ground," Kovalenko wrote. "And then the voices began, first quiet like whispers, but gradually increasing. We couldn't make out the words, but the intonations were clearly prayerful, ritualistic. And among these voices, the cry of a baby stood out distinctly, so realistic that two of us instinctively began to search for its source. The researchers noted that at some point, it seemed to them that the outlines of the long-gone house appeared in the moonlight as a ghostly projection. It was not a fully materialized object, but rather a shadow of the house, its memory, imprinted in the very fabric of reality. Kovalenko tried to explain. Through these ghostly walls we could see trees and bushes, but at the same time we could make out windows, doors, and even details of the interior decor. And in one of the second-floor windows stood a female figure with a baby in her arms, the very one spoken of in local legends. According to Kovalenko, the vision lasted no more than a minute, after which the ghostly house disappeared, the voices subsided, and the temperature returned to normal. When the researchers returned to their camp, they discovered that someone had been there in their absence. Things were scattered, tents were torn, and strange footprints were visible on the ground, too large for a human and with the imprint of 6 fingers. But the most alarming discovery awaited them in the morning. Examining the area in daylight, they came across a fresh grave which was definitely not there the day before. The grave was small, like a child's, and the roughly hewn wooden cross had the name Danchenko carved on it. The researchers did not dare to disturb the grave and reported their finding to the local authorities. However, when they returned there with the police the next day, the grave was gone, and in its place grew an old oak tree that, judging by its size, was at least 100 years old. Officials wrote everything off as a prank or a collective hallucination, possibly caused by poisonous spores of mushrooms common in the area. Kovalenko himself later admitted that he could not be completely sure of the objectivity of his observations, given the strong emotional stress that all members of the group experienced that night. However, he remained convinced that they had encountered something inexplicable from the point of view of modern science. The investigation into the history of the Danchenko family continued in the archives, where Kovalenko hoped to find additional information about the fate of the family members after their arrest. And here he was met with another shocking discovery. In the archive of the psychiatric hospital where Anna and Nikolai Danchenko were supposed to have been placed, there were no records of their stay there. A request to the state archives regarding the trial of Ekaterina also yielded no results. It seemed that after the arrest, the members of the Danchenko family simply disappeared from official documents, as if they had never existed. Only in the archive of the local church was there a record made by the priest, Father Pavel, who had been called to consecrate the area around the Danchenko house after the incident with the workers. "Today I received strange news," the priest wrote in his diary on March 3, 1917. "The arrested members of the Danchenko family, who were taken to the city 2 weeks ago, have somehow returned to their home. The village elder swears that he saw them all entering the house last night, even though the gates were locked and a guard was posted at the house. When the house was opened in the morning, no one was inside, but there were traces of wet mud on the floor in the living room, as if someone had entered from the street in rainy weather, even though the weather has been clear and frosty for the last few days. This record suggests that even if the members of the Danchenko family were physically eliminated by the authorities, their presence in some form persisted in the house, which they considered their ancestral home. Perhaps their connection to the mysterious Waiting One really gave them some kind of power that went beyond ordinary human understanding. The last documented mention of the Danchenko family was found in an unexpected place. In a report by German SS officer Otto Heinz, who served in the Annenberg unit and conducted research in occupied Polesye in 1942. This report was stored in the KGB archives and was only declassified in 2005. "Our research on the house in the village of Chorny Moki yielded unexpected results," Heinz wrote. According to local legends, a family lived in this house who practiced an ancient Slavic cult associated with an entity they called the Waiting One. Our measurements showed an abnormally high level of electromagnetic radiation in the basement of the house, especially in the secret room with the altar. Analysis of soil and dust samples taken from the altar revealed the presence of an unknown organic compound, the structure of which does not correspond to any substance known to science. But the most interesting thing in Heinz's report was the description of the experiment that the Germans conducted in the house. Using the medium Frau Schmidt, we tried to establish contact with the energy entity that, according to our measurements, is present in the house, he wrote. The experiment was successful, perhaps even too successful. Frau Schmidt fell into a trance and began to speak in a language that our linguists tentatively identified as an archaic form of Proto-Slavic. When we tried to interrupt the session, the medium began to show signs of physical transformation. Her eyes turned white, and additional fingers began to form on her hands. We were forced to take extreme measures and evacuate the entire research team from the house. Heinz noted that after this experiment, 3 of his subordinates committed suicide within a week, and he himself began to suffer from nightmares in which he saw a pale woman with white eyes holding a 6-fingered baby in her arms. "This woman keeps whispering to me that her son is waiting, that his time is coming soon," Heinz wrote. "I am afraid that we have awakened something that should have remained sleeping. I recommend that all research in this region be stopped immediately and that the house be sealed until a way is found to neutralize the entity." As far as we know, the Germans followed this recommendation and did not conduct any further experiments in the Danchenko house. Otto Heinz himself was recalled to Germany and later died under mysterious circumstances in his laboratory in 1944. The official version was an accident, but some researchers believe that Heinz committed suicide, unable to withstand the nightmares that haunted him. So what happened to the Danchenko family themselves? Official documents are silent about this, but local legends offer their own version. According to these stories, none of the family members were executed or placed in a mental hospital. Instead, they somehow returned to their home and continued to live there, but no longer as physical beings, but as ghosts or spirits bound to the house by the unbreakable bonds of their perverted faith. The old people said that on especially dark nights, especially during a full moon, you can see them gathering around the house. Ivan Kuzmich, an old resident of the village, told Mikhail Petrov, "There are 6 of them. An old woman, a young man, a young woman with a baby in her arms, and 2 children. They walk around the house as if looking for an entrance, and sometimes they stop, looking at passers-by with their white eyes. If someone lingers and meets their gaze, they begin to approach, holding out their 6-fingered hands. They say that whoever they touch dies within 3 days, and his soul joins their eternal dance." But the most disturbing thing in these legends is the mention that the ghostly Danchenko family does not always stay at their house. Sometimes they come to the village and look into the windows of houses where there are small children, another old resident said. They seem to be looking for someone specific, and if a child wakes up and sees them, they smile at him and call him to come with them. Several children who disappeared from the village over the years were seen on the eve of their disappearance talking to a white-eyed woman or a strange boy with 6 fingers. These stories could have remained just village superstitions were it not for one circumstance discovered by Andrei Kovalenko's research group. While studying church records of births and baptisms in the village of Chorny Moki and the surrounding villages over the past 100 years, they noticed a disturbing pattern. Approximately once every 25 years, a child was born in the region with 6 fingers on each hand and a congenital lack of pigment in the iris of the eyes, which made his eyes appear white. "We tracked at least 4 such cases," Kovalenko wrote, "in 1922, 1972, and 1997. In all cases, the child was born into a family that had no visible connections with the Danchenko family, and in all cases, the child died or disappeared before reaching the age of 1 year, and soon after that, his mother either committed suicide or went insane." Kovalenko suggested that these children may have been a kind of reincarnation of that very waiting one that Grigory Danchenko so yearned to create. Perhaps the waiting one, whoever or whatever he is, has indeed found a way to penetrate our world through these children, the researcher wrote. And the Danchenko family, or what remains of it, somehow contributes to this process, seeking out suitable vessels among newborns. If this pattern holds true, the next such child should have been born around 2022, and indeed, in the journal Anomalous Phenomena for 2023, a short note appeared about a strange case in one of the villages of Polesye, where a young woman gave birth to a child with anomalies similar to those described above. According to the note, the mother and child disappeared from the hospital the day after the birth, and their whereabouts remain unknown. Whether this is a coincidence, a hoax, or a continuation of the ancient curse of the Danchenko family, we will probably never know for sure. The documents preserved in the archives give only a fragmentary picture of the events of 100 years ago, and the local legends have undoubtedly acquired many fictional details over the years. But one thing can be said with certainty. The story of the Danchenko family reminds us of the dark corners of the human soul, of the perverted forms that faith can take when isolated from society and fueled by fear and madness. Perhaps the ghosts that are rumored to still roam the forests of Polesye are not supernatural entities, but only echoes of the terrible crimes committed by real people, whose obsession with false ideas led them to moral and physical degeneration. But if you ever find yourself in those parts, in the remote forests of Polesye, where the swamps have kept their secrets for centuries, and hear the strange cry of a child where there should be no children, do not stop, do not look back, and most importantly, do not answer if someone calls you by name in a voice like your mother's, because maybe that Danchenko family is still looking for new vessels for their mysterious waiting one. And no one knows how many souls they have already collected over these long years, and how many more they need before what is waiting beyond can finally fully enter our world. Our investigation into the history of the Danchenko family has come to an end, but more questions remain than answers. Perhaps some secrets are best left unraveled, some doors locked, because sometimes knowledge does not liberate, but only brings new nightmares. And sometimes what we call superstitions and prejudices is actually ancient wisdom warning us about dangers too terrible to be expressed in simple words. As for the Danchenko family, well, perhaps they really disappeared more than 100 years ago, and all the stories about them are just the fruit of popular imagination mixed with echoes of real, but much more prosaic crimes. But sometimes, on especially dark nights, when the moon hides behind the clouds and the wind carries strange sounds from the depths of the forest, it's hard not to wonder, what if they are still there, among the shadows, watching, waiting, and searching? What if the blood of the Danchenkos, that forbidden blood whispered about in Polesye, still flows in the veins of someone who walks among us, unaware of their origin and the legacy that may one day manifest itself? And what if the one who is waiting is still waiting, getting closer to our world with each passing year? Perhaps now, as you read these lines, somewhere in the backwoods of Polesye, a child is being born with white eyes and 6 fingers on each hand. And maybe tonight, ghosts with pale faces will come to him to take him with them to where the Danchenko family's house once stood, where, under a layer of earth and tree roots, an ancient altar still lies hidden, stained with the blood of many generations, an altar on which the last ritual may one day take place, completing what Hieronym Danchenko began many centuries ago. And then we will all know who or what is hiding behind that boundary, behind which the mysterious patron of the Danchenko family has been waiting for so long. But I'm afraid it will be too late by then to change anything.